Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World with me, John Jordan. So, been looking at Blankos for a while now. You obviously see since June. So I thought it's kind of time to have a really quick update. And what I'm looking at here is the return on investment. So ROI, return on investment. And this is if you'd bought every Blanko that as it became available. So there's about 55 Blankos now that they've been made available in different ways. So some of them have been available just for a day. Some of them have been available for maybe a month or so. Some of them have been limited to 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000. So there's different sort of scarcity models around the Blankos. But basically, if you'd bought every single one of the Blankos that you could buy, what would be the return on investment? There are some Blankos that you can't buy. So there's some that you have to earn. Some whole bunch were given away back in the day. So this is just looking at the ones that you could buy. And I guess the key thing, there's sort of one main thing about the graph. So you can see here, when I started looking at this, so basically every day I go to the marketplace, which everyone can sign up. If you create a Blankos account, it's in early access. You can create a Blankos account and never play the game. You could just look at the marketplace. But you can see here, back in sort of June, July, the return on investment was still was still at like 100%. So if you bought something for $10, you were selling it for $20. And actually, sort of most of the Blankos were originally sold at sort of prices from $10, $15, $20. That's the most of them. Some of them more expensive. The most expensive one so far is $300 for the Burberry one. But basically, people were sort of trading these things. There is also, I should point out, this is looking at the floor price. This is looking at the cheapest one. So when it comes to Blankos pricing, there is sort of pricing around which is scarcer, which Blankos characters are there fewer of than others. Obviously, that makes them more valuable. Or not obviously, but that's how the pricing mechanic sort of seems to go. The other thing is within a Blankos set, the most valuable ones are the ones with the lowest serial number. So the most valuable one will always be the one with the number one serial number. That will always have a disproportionate amount of value. But what I'm looking at here is the floor price. So this is just the cheapest one you can find. So what's interesting here is we have this big sea change here at this sort of at the start of August, the 3rd of August. You start to see this very big change from 100% to like getting on for 200, 300%. And this just happens because for the first time, everyone can start buying Blankos NFTs on the marketplace. Previously, they've been selling them through the shop as these limited drops. And at this point here in sort of June, July, the only people who can use the marketplace are the sort of early people who've been invited. So there's a sort of small number, probably a few thousand people who are buying and selling, but there's not a big volume going through here. So what happens here in this situation is suddenly everyone with a game account can start buying Blankos. So that sort of obviously drives the price up because there's money flowing into the system. What's interesting here is at the moment the only people who can sell Blankos are people from the US, the UK, Germany, and Canada. So it's still quite limited on the sale side. So I imagine when everyone can start selling, there may be sort of apply a price sort of correction. I would imagine that for some period of time, at least, the price will go down because people can start selling. So it's certainly around the floor price. The cheapest ones will start going down. But I think sort of over time, I'm obviously kind of quite bullish on Blankos. I think even at that period of time, the pricing of the rarest ones, the ones with the lowest serial numbers, will continue to be pretty robust, I would think. But this sort of shows. One conclusion here. This sort of shows what happens when you allow sort of a marketplace to start operating in a general sense. Obviously, it's not fully open yet because people can't sell. And also, the other thing to think of is when people can start selling their Blankos, and when everyone can buy and sell Blankos, then you start to get trading, and people are sort of selling their cheaper ones out to buy better ones. That's sort of how it works. Obviously, some people just come in and buy a Blanko that they want in order to use in the game. But amongst traders, once everyone can buy and sell, you start to see people selling off their high serial numbers to buy low serial numbers. That's sort of how the model works. But it is quite interesting that even here you are up 100%. Obviously, this is not investment advice. This is just kind of looking in the past. You're up 100% here, and now you're up sort of getting on for 500%, which is obviously pretty good business. The other thing to say why this is not investment advice actually is this is sort of a process that's typical for sort of early stage projects. So here, not many people know about Blankos, and when those Blankos are dropping, there's just not that much volume. People, not so many people are interested in Blankos now. As more people are interested in Blankos, you can just see the whenever they do like a new drop, they just sell out. It's pretty much immediately. There's much more demand. So this sort of this sort of model here, where I'm looking at all the Blankos that have ever been sold, like whatever it is, like kind of 45 of them, 45 of the 55, I would think. Those ones you can't replicate having the old Blankos, and you can't buy those anymore. So obviously the price of those is going to go up. Whereas when new Blankos are dropped now, everyone's coming in and buying them up. So the ROI on those new Blankos in general will be less than those of the past, because obviously the ones in the past, there are just fewer of them, and they sort of have historic sort of relevance to them, and fewer people have them. So if you want them, you have to buy them. Whereas when the new ones drop, then people who are interested in Blankos will just buy them there and then. So it's slightly different dynamic. So definitely in this case, this is not investment advice, and definitely there's a different sort of model going on here. But this is the same for really much for many blockchain NFT projects. This is sort of the risk reward thing. If it's something that you're really into, it's best to get in early, because the people who come in late are effectively using their money to sort of buy into history, yeah, that's how it goes. So anyway, that was that. I didn't really have any deeper conclusions about Blankos Block Party, other than the fact that I think it's a super interesting project, and I just really like the NFTs. So that's always the most important thing when you look at NFT projects. Do you really like the NFT? Would you care if the value went to zero? And in this case of Blankos, you can still use them in the game, and that would be really fun. So that's the way to think about it. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. Please subscribe to the channel, all about blockchain games. See you again soon.